So Noam Chomsky, the far-left big shot, has a famous line where he makes fun of the insult anti-American. Only in a country as insecure as the United States would they use an insult like this, he says. In Italy, for instance, no one is ever accused of being anti-Italian. But on the other hand, it is also just a fact that the adjective American is flexible in a way almost no other title of nationality is. I've always been amazed at just how many different ideas can be conveyed through the term American in politics and literature and music and movies and food, you name it. So here is my guide to the 7 definitions of American. Definition 1 is the most basic and literal. American describes anyone and anything found inside the United States of America. For example, American citizens, the American Academy of Periodontology, or the American Blue-Nosed Pit Bull. Pretty straightforward. Definition number 2 is also geographic, but broader. A lot of people in South and Latin America claim the title of American too, and often resent United Statesians for hogging the term. And as a result, the term American is sometimes used in a broader sense to describe things in the entire Western Hemisphere, such as the Organization of American States or the Pan-American Games. A lot of plants or animals that are called the American this or that might actually be found mostly in countries other than the US as well, like the American three-toed woodpecker, which lives mostly up here in Canada. Moving on, definition number 3 is the political definition that old man Chomsky was so uppity about. This is the idea of American meaning some bundle of political or philosophical ideas that the United States is supposedly devoted to. Think of when people say things like American values or the American dream, or how about Superman fighting for
truth, justice, and the American way.
But the United States is also a gigantic country, so it can be pretty hard to confidently say what all Americans believe in. So it is often easier to just talk about what they don't believe in, or shouldn't. The insult of anti-American obviously has a long history of being used as a sort of synonym for treason, most famously during the paranoid 1950s when the US Congress literally maintained a Un-American Activities Committee to root out suspected traitors, mostly communists and socialists. But the insult has remained popular all across the political spectrum. This story, for example, has Kamala Harris calling President Trump's harsh immigration policies unnecessary and un-American. Okay, so definition number 4 is when American is used to mean like some updated new world version of some old-fashioned thing. It's often used in a kind of ironic way, with the idea being that American things kind of embody the weirdness of our modern world. Examples would be like the show American Gladiators, or American Gods, or even that famously weird painting American Gothic. One of the most famous biographies of General MacArthur, meanwhile, is called American Caesar. And I read a good book a while ago about the murder of the Mormon leader Joseph Smith that had the great title American Crucifixion. A sort of similar one is using American to mean something very middle class, but usually with a dark edge. This evokes a popular idea that America's seemingly contented bourgeois exterior masks something sinister just below the surface. Films like American Psycho or American Gigolo or American Beauty would be classic examples. One of my favorite novels is a book by Philip Roth called American Pastoral, which is a pretty upsetting story about the collapse of a middle-class family. One of Barack Obama's favorite novels, meanwhile, is said to be An American Marriage by T.R.E. Jones, which is about a middle-class black family where the husband gets imprisoned for a crime he didn't commit. But there is a happier version of this definition of American as well. The idea of the all-American boy, for instance, is all about celebrating a certain kind of bourgeois aesthetic, unless we are talking about the novel All-American Boys, which is about racially motivated police brutality. Alright, so the next one isn't really used in the title of things so much, but it's the idea of American meaning something that is very excessive or over the top or even slightly grotesque in some way. For example, listen to this reporter's description of Paul Manafort's fraud trial.
Look, the trial is a fascinating American spectacle. You know, you have $15,000 ostrich jackets, you have lavish real estate purchases of millions of dollars, luxury cars.
This vulgar definition of American can be used to describe everything from the JonBenet Ramsey affair to the disgusting KFC Double Down, which The Atlantic sarcastically calls an all-American sandwich. Or how about this meme of Ronald McDonald, which someone has labeled the most American picture I've ever seen. Americans themselves tend to use this definition a lot when describing something about their own culture they don't really like. And of course, when we think of snooty Europeans complaining about the Americanization of their culture, this is generally the understanding of the term we're using as well. And lastly, I'd say there's also the gentle, friendly version of American, meaning something that just embodies some broad sense of American cultural goodness. So like when Willie Nelson calls his album American Classic, that would be an example. Or when some company rolls out their American collection of mattresses or whatever. American, in this sense, is just kind of an empty marketing word that advertisers can use to try to give you the warm fuzzies about just about anything, be it a pumpkin-scented candle or a country sausage biscuit. So, did I miss any definitions of American that you can think of? And how about some more good examples of things that fit into one of these categories? Let me know in the comments, for it is the American thing to do.